Okay, bro.
So can you see my screen?
Yeah, it's possible.
Okay. So good evening to one and all present here. I'm Neha from CSE department, and I'm here with my friend Jaiadityan. We're going to discuss about the topic development in Django. So first, let us see what are the contents. What is Django and where did it come from? How popular is Django and is Django opinionated? What does Django code look like? And lastly, summary. So the first one is Django introduction. Let us see what are the requirements. Prerequisites: basic computer literacy, a general understanding of server-side website programming, and in particular the mechanics of the client-server interactions in websites, and the objective: to gain familiarity with what Django is, what functionality it provides, and the main building blocks of a Django application. First, what is Django? It is a high-level Python framework that enables rapid development of secure and maintainable websites. Built by experienced developers, Django takes care of much of the hassle of web development, so you can focus on writing your app without needing to reinvent the wheel. It is free and open source, has a thriving and active community, great documentation, and many options for free and paid for support. Now, Django helps you write software that is first is complete. Django follows the batteries included philosophy and provides almost everything developers might want to do out of the box. Because everything you need is a part of one product, it all works seamlessly together, follows consistent design principles, and has extensive and up to date documentation. And the second one is versatile. Django can be used to build almost any type of website, from content management systems and wikis through to social networks and news sites. It can work with any client side framework and can deliver content in almost any format, including HTML, RSS, feeds, JSON, XML, etc. Internally, while it provides choices for almost any functionality you might want, example, several popular databases, templating engines, etc. It can also be extended to use other components if needed. And third is secure. Django helps developers avoid many common security mistakes by providing a framework that has been engineered to do the right things, to protect the website automatically. For example, Django provides a secure way to manage user accounts and passwords, avoiding common mistakes like putting section information in cookies where it is vulnerable, or directly storing passwords rather than a password hash. So, a password hash is a fixed length value created by sending the password through a cryptographic hash function. Django can check if an entered password is correct by running it through a hash function and comparing the output to the stored hash value. However, due to one-way nature of the function, even if a stored hash value is compromised, it is hard for an attacker to work out the original password. Django enables protection against many vulnerabilities by default, including SQL injection, cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery, and click jacking. So the next one is scalable. Django uses a component-based shared netting, an architecture. So each part of the architecture is independent of the others and can hence be replaced or changed if needed. Having a clear separation between the different parts means that it can scale with increased traffic by adding hardware at any level, taking servers, database servers, or application servers. Some of the busiest sites have successfully scaled Django to meet the demands. And the next one is maintainable. Django code is written using design principles and patterns that encourage the creation of maintainable and reusable code. In particular, it makes use of don't repeat yourself principle, so there is no unnecessary duplication, reducing the amount of code. It also promotes the grouping of related functionality into reusable applications and at a lower level groups related code into modules. The last is portable. So Django is written in Python, which runs on many platforms. That means you are not tied to any particular server platform and can run your applications on many flavors of Linux, Windows, and macOS. Furthermore, Django is well supported by many web hosting providers who often provide specific infrastructure and documentation for hosting Django sites. And the next one comes, where did it come from? So Django was initially developed between 2003 and 2005 by a web team who were responsible for creating and maintaining newspaper websites. After creating a number of sites, the team began to factor out and reuse lots of common code and design patterns. This common code evolved into a generic web development framework, which was open sourced as the Django project in July 2005. Django has continued to grow and improve from its first milestone release in September 2008 through to the recently released version 2022. Each release has added new functionality and bug fixes, ranging from support for new types of databases, template engines, and caking, through to the addition of the generic view functions and classes. Django is now thriving, collaborative open source project with many thousands of users and contributors. While it does still have some features that reflects its origin, Django has evolved into a versatile framework that is capable of developing any type of website. And the next one is, how popular is Django? Based on number of high-profile sites that use Django, the number of people contributing to the code base, and the number of people providing both free and paid support, then yes, Django is a popular framework. And the next is Django opinionated. So web frameworks often refer to themselves as opinionated or unopinionated. Opinionated frameworks are those with opinions about the right way to handle any particular task. They often support rapid development in a particular domain, solving problems of a particular type, because the right way to do anything is usually well understood and well documented. However, they can be less flexible at solving problems outside the main domain and tend to offer fewer choices for what components and approaches they can use. Unopinionated frameworks, by contrast, have far fewer restrictions on the best way to glue components together to achieve a goal, or even what component should be used. They make it easier for developers to use the most suitable tools to complete a particular task, able it at the cost that you will need to find those components yourself. So it is a somewhat opinionated and hence delivers the best of both worlds. It provides a set of components to handle most web development tasks and one or two preferred ways to use them. And the next is, what does Django code look like? In a traditional data-driven website, a web application waits for HTTP requests from the web browser or other client. When a request is received, the application works out what is needed based on the URL and possibly information in post data or get data. Depending on what is required, it may then read or write information from a database or perform other tasks required to satisfy the request. The application will then return a response to a web browser, often dynamically creating an HTML page for the browser to display by inserting the retrieved data into placeholders in an HTML template. On furthermore sections, you'll learn about how the group of code that handles each of these steps into separate files. Over to Jaiadityan.
Myself, Jaiadityan. Without any introduction, let's jump into the topic. URLs. While it is possible to process the request from every single URL via a single function, it must be more maintainable to write a separate view function to handle each resource. A URL mapper is used to redirect HTTP requests to appropriate view based on a request of URL. The URL mapper can also match a particular pattern of string or digit that appears in a URL and pass these to a view function as a data. A view function. A view is a request handler function which receives HTTP request and returns HTTP response. Views access the data needed to satisfy the request via models and delegate the formatting of the response through templates. Models. Models are Python objects that define the structure of an application's data and provide the mechanism to manage like add, modify, and delete, and query records in the database. Templates. A template is a text file defining the structure or a layout of a file, such as HTML, with placeholders used to represent the actual content. A view can dynamically create an HTML page using HTML templates. Populating it with the data of model, a template can be used to define a structure of any type of file. It does not have to be a HTML. Next, we'll see about sending the request to write view, that is our urls.py. A URL mapper is typically stored in a text file named url.py. In example, the mapper, that is URL patterns, define a list of mapping between routes and corresponding view functions. If an HTTP request is received that has a URL matching a specified pattern, then the associated view function will be called and pass the request. The URLs object of the list of path and or repath function. The first argument of both methods is a route, that is the pattern, that would be matched. The path method uses the angular bracket to define the parts of a URL that will be captured and passed through the view function as named argument. The repath function uses a flexible pattern matching approach known as a regular expression. The second argument in the other function that will be called when the pattern is matched. The notation is views.book_detail. That indicates that the function is called book_details with a simpler bracket and can be found in the model called views. Next, we'll see about handling the request, that is views.py. Views are the heart of the application, receiving HTTP request from the client and returning HTTP response. In between, they marshal the other resources of framework to access the database, render the templates, etc. The example shown is a minimal view function of index, which could have been called by our URL mapper in the previous section. Like all view function, it receives an HTTP request object as a parameter called request and returns an HTTP response. In this case, we don't do anything with the request and our response return in a hard-coded string. We will show you the request in some other session. Next, we'll see about the defining data models, that is our models.py. Django web application manage and query through Python objects referred as models. Models define the structure of stored data, including the field types and possibly also the maximum size, default values, selection list options, help text for the documentation, label text for the forms, etc. The definition of the model is independent of the underlying database. You can choose one of several parts of a database for your project settings. Once you have chosen what database you want to use, you don't need to talk to it directly at all. You just write your model structure and other code, and Django handles all the dirty work of communication between the database for you. The code snippet shows very simple Django model for a team object. The team class is derived from the Django class, that is models.model. It defines the team name and team level as the character fields and specific maximum numbers of character that can be stored in each record. The team underscore level can be one of a several value. So we define it as a choice field and providing a mapping between choice to be displayed and data to be stored among the default values. Next, we'll see about querying data. Django model provides a query API for searching the associate database. This can match against a number of fields at a time using a certain criteria and can support complex statements. The code snippet shows a view function that is our resource handler for displaying all our U09 team, that is our under 9 team. The list underscore teams equal to team dot objects dot filter with simple brackets team underscore level underscore exact equal to with strings U09. This line shows how we can use the model query API to filter all our records where the team level field has exact text U09. Next, we'll see about rendering data, that is our HTML templates. Template system allows you to specify the structure of output document using placeholders for data that will be filled when the page is generated. The templates are often used to create a HTML page, but can also create other types of documents. Django supports both its native templating system and other popular Python library called Jinja 2 out of the box. The code snippet shows what the HTML template called by the render function. In the previous section, we might have looked over it. This template has been written under the assumption that it will have access to the list variable called youngest underscore team. When it is rendered, inside the HTML skeleton, we have the expression that first checks if the youngest underscore team variable exists, and then it iterates in a for loop. On each iteration, the template displays team's name in the value of list element. Summary. Congratulations, you have learned the first step of Django journey. You should now understand the main benefits, a little about its history, and roughly what each of the main parts of Django application might look like. You have already seen some real-time code above, but unlikely with the client-side code, you need to set up the environment first. Thank you.
Thank you.